Deleted session, June 15, 1981. Now, good evening. Comments. Most jobs or even vocations carry along with them implied guidelines, specifications, and definite requirements that serve to define the work involved. Within those specifications, certain actions are performed. Within those specifications, certain standards are met or not met. They are pats on the back for achievement or whatever. There are certain methods involved as a rule, and perhaps time requirements. Very often, specific meanings are given to certain words, so that you have what amounts to a professional vocabulary. Often specific mediums of expression are concerned. The professional violinist, while involved with music, is not necessarily expected to be a great vocalist. He may sing raspy notes indeed, without any aspersions being cast upon his playing of the violin. Ruber is operating in an era in which there are few such specifications simply because no one knows what can or cannot be done. Practically speaking, at psychic levels, some people highly gifted with psychic abilities gravitate toward various activities. They find themselves acting more naturally, creatively, and efficiently, following their own natural bents. They are naturally devoted to healing, whether or not, for example, they may be highly proficient. That is the field of their interest, intent, and ability. Then within the range of your practical reality, they learn to utilize that ability. Others, for their own reasons, as numerous as there are individuals, are interested in pursuing the wicked, finding the lost, teaching creativity, seeing into the future or past or whatever. The psychic abilities operate along with your other characteristics. The person interested in the psychic pursuit of the wicked, for example, certainly has as much in common basically with the policeman or detective as he or she has with other psychics, regardless of the differences that seem to exist. Psychic musicians or artists are highly interested in music, using their psychic abilities in that direction. In those situations, natural leanings and intents help specify what is expected and not expected. Now, in those terms, Ruber has often expected too much from himself. Part of the reason lies in the pervading popular misconceptions about psychic ability. Part lies in the very fact of the unknown elements that are involved. He does possess natural desires, characteristics, and intents that help focus his own activity. And he also feels strong disinclinations in some other areas. Those disinclinations are quite healthy indicators that in those cases he is straying away from the strong areas of his own proficiency and interest. When he demands too much of himself, there is nowhere along the line where he can securely rest, pat himself on the back, and say, "You have done a good job," because what he has performed seems so inadequate in the light of what he feels is expected. It would be most bendy for him, after some thinking, to draw up his own statements of the areas of his main concentrations. Generally speaking, anything outside of that area is not to be expected from him. He need not concern himself there. He can quite honestly state that such and such is outside of the area of his concentration. at the far periphery of his field. People will understand if he is clear in his own mind. The same applies, of course, to healing, regardless of the differences with which the public considers exist between the medical profession and psychic healing. Psychic healers have very much in common with doctors or nurses, and use their psychic abilities in a way that follows those characteristics and leanings. Basically, Robert does not have those characteristics. Everyone has healing abilities, but Robert, basically speaking, is interested in the theoretical and the philosophical concerns that underlie the condition of health. He would not, on his own, be a doctor or a nurse or whatever, so his psychic abilities are not naturally and enthusiastically expanded in those directions in terms of a vocation or the requirements of a profession. This does not mean that at times he may not help others generate healing abilities within themselves, since he is indeed involved in those other patterns of action that interweave with all of life's activities. He should not expect himself to perform as a professional healer or be disappointed with himself if he does not. The term psychic is ill-defined, so he must define for himself the field of his activity, specify clearly for both of your sakes where his own strengths lie and his intent, and what is to be expected of him and what is not. Even within that statement, there must be room for growth and accomplishment, to explore the nature of reality. Now, how do you practically interpret such an intention? Where does such an exploration begin or end? Robert's natural psychic abilities follow his own abilities again, and the characteristics. They cannot be patterned upon other people's. He has his own way of dealing with details. An instinctive manner. They all go into the creative meal, for example, where they are in their ways uniquely sorted, transformed into patterns, emerging into creative illuminations. He may on the other hand appear to normally ignore details. I suggest that such a statement be drawn up, for it would certainly help clarify many situations, and show Robert that he was performing very well indeed. The nebulous nature of the psychic has served to help build up a picture of an unrealistic super-self mentioned earlier that is supposed to perform a dazzling array of activities, solving everyone's problems, displaying all of the psychic abilities at once, from healing to finding a lost kitten. It is in the light of that image that Robert feels incompetent, a highly important point. He feels caught between the image of expected super-competence and the image of the sinful self, which feels competent of doing very little. The sinful self and the super-self are alike unrealistic. Robert's material about Prentice Hall was quite correct. He is not a businesswoman in the terms that a person is who is primarily devoted to business. He does, however, possess excellent instincts in certain directions that automatically bring money to you and ensures the publication of his books and so forth. These operate quite naturally in your lives. He felt that he was at certain times caught between you and the Prentice, more worried about dealing with your attitudes toward Prentice than he was about dealing with the situation itself with Prentice. As he tried to comprehend it, he also felt that certain attitudes of yours toward the marketplace would spill over and threaten the unimpeded clear channel that he felt has been formed to convey his writing to the public realm. He realized that the channel had some muddy spots in it, some impediments, that it ran more clearly in some areas than others. He did not idealize the situation. In other words, the entire situation, however, bothered him deeply, since he felt, of course, a great sense of loyalty to you even when he did not share your particular beliefs at any given point. He also, as he stated, was afraid that your attitudes would splash over to color your feelings toward future self-books and toward your future contribution toward him. All of this existed, of course, in a situation in which the aspects of tense position and the apprentice situation were themselves changing and uncertain. All of this should be considered along with the natural uncertainties that exist in creative ventures, his desire for inspiration and so forth. He needs to clarify the circle of his expectations, as earlier suggested this evening. All of these issues added to increased tension, so that he did not know what direction to move in, and felt his motion blocked. Added to this, the two of you had a tendency to concentrate upon the problems, which contributed in a large manner to the entire situation. It is important that Ruber define what is expected of the practical self and what falls outside of its realm. The sinful self in the past has felt even more sinful, for example, in comparison to the unrealistic expectations set upon the self by the super images. Ruber expected to be the super healer, super clairvoyant, and so forth. Ruber is a natural receiver of psychic information, of knowledge from another level of activity, a natural receiver of deep insights that are a part of your spiritual and biological heritage, and a natural translator of such material. That is his primary most proficient area of exploration and accomplishment. His body is indeed releasing tensions, adjusting at the most profound levels of motion, and the process involves, as stated, the release of old panics. Additional vigor can be expected as the energy that had been used by the panic is now made practically available to the body. He is supported by his own nature and by the source of his own nature. End of session, and a fond evening. Ralph said, "Thank you, good night."